did you learn to love yourself? This morning I want to talk about the greatest love of all. I want to kind of talk about the concept of self-love. I'm going to start with telling you about 3 very impactful moments in my life where I was moved to instant tears. I'm not talking about just crying. I'm talking about instant tears. The first time was in 1993. I was in Washington, D.C., and if you've ever ridden in the metro system in Washington, D.C., you'll know that at the Smithsonian Station, there is a very, very long escalator. And it takes you to the mall, the National Mall. So in 1993, I was riding that escalator, and I came up out of the depths of the metro system onto the mall, and I found myself in an absolute sea of rainbow flags and hundreds of thousands of people at the March on Washington for gay rights. Never in my life had I seen that many human beings in one place, first of all, but I also had never seen such a profound display of self-acceptance and pride. I was moved to instant tears. The second time that I'll tell you about was in 2001, when I found myself in a seat very similar to the one you're sitting in, an environment very similar to this one, in the Center for Spiritual Living in Seattle. And it was in that moment that I was surrounded by hundreds of people who had an understanding and an expression of unity and oneness that had somehow and miraculously enveloped me and my young daughter. The message there was similar to the message here. It was about my inherent goodness and the light that lived inside of me. And the music was similar to the music here. It just touched my heart. And I remember that first time, that first Sunday that I was there, I was sitting next to the friend who brought me there, and I was just crying. And she tapped me on the leg, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I was more than okay. So that was the second time. The third time that I can remember being moved to instant tears was almost exactly 10 years ago in 2006, within a couple of weeks of today, 10 years ago, when I walked for the very first time into Becky's home. She's now my wife, but back then she was a relatively new girlfriend. And the first time that I ever walked into her home, I was moved by the sense of serenity and peace that was there. I knew I belonged there. The vibration of that space was so similar to me, and I felt moved to instant tears. Now, all 3 of those experiences illustrate the same story, and it's a universal story. It's a story that we're all telling. It's a journey that we're all on as we live our lives. You see, I believe that we are on a journey when we come into this human existence, and it's a journey toward greater love, and specifically greater self-love. But the interesting part of this mysterious journey that we're on is that it seems like in childhood or early adulthood, we seem to be set up in situations and experiences that deeply challenge our ability to love ourselves. It seems to me a universal truth that we are given what I'm going to call self-love puzzles to solve. We get our entire lifetimes to solve these puzzles and move toward the prize. And now I'll talk about the prize in a minute. So if this is true, what are your self-love puzzles? How are they set up for you? So as I examine my own life, I can really begin to identify easily some of the self-love puzzles. And others I have to really look for more closely. So you're going to be looking for things about yourself that perhaps caused you to maybe shrink back, or maybe makes you squirm in shame, or perhaps these kinds of things still make you uncomfortable when they're being talked about or people notice them about you. Those might be your self-love puzzles. These are things that we might be inclined to mask or hide from others. So let's see if we can stand on some common ground together in that way. So first of all, I had to learn to love my body. This seems to be a very, very common self-love puzzle. And it seems to show up in adolescence, sometimes earlier than that. But in adolescence, it definitely shows up for most people. Now myself, I was always taller than most of the girls. Okay, I was chubbier too, but that's beside the point. But I still to this day have many, many opportunities to unravel the knot of that puzzle of self-love. But I lived it daily, this one, until I was about 40. See, these magic suits, I call this a magic suit, and we zip into it to have these human experiences. These magic suits are fraught with opportunities for self-love puzzles, aren't they? You know, perhaps you feel you're too short, you're too squatty, you're too ethnic, you're too something. Perhaps you have a disability that challenges you, or perhaps a diagnosis that you have to deal with. Perhaps you have a physical feature that you just despise. Something. There's something there. See, our bodies are so easily compared to each other. And we're always comparing ours to other people's. And somehow that sets up this feeling of separation and difference. I'm different. I'm different. I truly believe that all of us have or have had a self-love puzzle about our bodies. It's just part of being human. And if we don't solve this one, it can be a lifelong experience, constantly unraveling that knot. So then my second big love puzzle was about my sexual orientation. Now, maybe for you it isn't sexual orientation, but there's something that makes you feel different than the crowd, different than the majority. Perhaps you were a different race than most of the people around you as you were growing up. Perhaps you were experiencing a different socioeconomic status than what was normal around you. Maybe you felt like your family was just weird and different and you were having an experience that your friends weren't having. But something challenges us and makes us feel different and separate. This self-love puzzle about being different sets up this idea that we are separate and we are on a journey towards figuring out our oneness again. So as was the case of people my age and older, being gay just was not acceptable. It wasn't even talked about in my house or even in my small town. It wasn't even a good joke to tell. It just really wasn't acceptable. Thankfully, this puzzle just really didn't show up for me in my mind as a remote possibility until I was safely away from my fundamentalist Christian home. So it decided to show up, wait for it, when I was in a conservative Southern Baptist college. That's when the puzzle just decides to show itself. And to make it more complicated, in my college, being gay was grounds for immediate dismissal from college. And just to tie the knot just a little tighter, I was on a full ride academic scholarship. So there was a lot riding on me not unraveling that little knot too fast. Right? So it took me, Spirit has a sense of humor. It took me almost 10 years from the time that I realized that I was gay until that March on Washington. 10 years. So what was I doing during those 10 years? I was working at that puzzle. I was trying to fit the pieces together to figure out, how do I love myself in this way that is so not lovable? So I first, kind of found a little small group of gay friends. Some of them are in this room right now, that I could actually find a measure of love for myself. And then maybe I could expand that circle just a little bit wider and tell a few of my family members, and then more of my family, perhaps a few coworkers. Then I could become out a little bit more at work until I could finally accept myself. And then I finally had that March on Washington moment where I just said, heck, I'll be on TV. I don't care. It's not worth it. It's worth it. The whole entire world can see. I don't care. So no wonder the tears of freedom just flowed down my face. 10 years on that journey, working on that one. And interestingly, it's that same self-love puzzle I was still working on in 2001 when I came into the Center for Spiritual Living. You see, being raised in a fundamentalist Christian household, God didn't love me if I was gay. God itself did not love me if I was gay. There were other reasons that God didn't seem to love me either. I didn't really understand the literal interpretation of the Bible. I didn't have that level of faith. And I refused to condemn people on their path to God just because it was a different God than I understood. I refused. It didn't make sense. So I was way, way out of the realm of God's love. I walked around my life trying to figure out, how can I love myself if God and religion doesn't love me and accept me? So I was 37 when I walked into the Science of Mind. And not only did I find out I was lovable, I found out I was love itself. I could then begin to heal and unravel that self-love puzzle as it related to God and my relationship with that, feeling separate from it and then perhaps feeling a part of it. You know, today, I was down at Pride yesterday working the booth, and today there are many, many of our members that are down there right now. And each and every person at Pride is somewhere on their journey, looking and working on that self-love puzzle as it relates to sexual orientation or gender identification or something like that. They're working on that puzzle. And the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta was one of the very first places in Atlanta where gay people were not only tolerated, but were welcomed and celebrated. The founder of this center, Kennedy Schultz, was a trailblazer in that regard. And I know today at Pride there are dozens of spiritual and religious communities welcoming and accepting the gay community, but we were one of the first. And I'm incredibly touched by that. We still remain a place where people can come, realize that God not only loves them, that they are the love of God. We are a place where you have access to worship and community, regardless of who you are. And sometimes we're asked, are you a gay church? No, we're not a gay church. We're a spiritual center. We're a home where everyone can come and feel love and loved. So yes, we welcome all walks along their life of solving that puzzle. And I've seen many instant tears flowing in this room over that. So the third puzzle that I had to work on was, how do I love myself with this quirky personality? Right? So relationships are the ways that we look in the mirror. We look in the mirror and we see ourselves as we see ourselves. We see that reflected in another. So as I was learning to love myself, I kept attracting relationships over the years where I was labeled as too controlling, too emotional, too intense, too frugal, too, what are some others? Whatever I felt about myself kept showing up in the relationship, and I wondered if I was even lovable to the point that I could attract someone to love me as I loved myself. To be honest, I believe I had to unravel some of those other self-love puzzles for me to attract someone who could show up and mirror that back to me. I had to heal my body issues. I had to accept my gayness fully. I had to really figure out my spiritual identity and find peace with that, and embrace my quirky personality to the point that I would rather be happy alone than to be in a relationship where I could not show up fully and love myself. And when I had those self-love puzzles solved to a certain tipping point, I could attract a beautiful partner that could help me find some of those other missing pieces and continue to work on my healing. And walking into her home 10 years ago, I realized I had finally found someone who could appreciate and relate to me just as I was. How powerful was that? But that's my story. So let me ask you again, what are your self-love puzzles? What about yourself did you learn to doubt about your lovability, perhaps in childhood or young adulthood, that you're still unraveling? How were you seemingly different from everyone else? Those are the things that call you forward to greater self-love and toward the prize. So let's talk about the prize. The prize that is available to us, if we can learn to love ourselves, is freedom. It is oneness, it is joy, it is peace, it is harmony, it is love, it is wisdom. And I hope those words are really familiar to you, because if you've been in class, you know those are the words that we use to describe God itself. They're the God qualities. And that is what is available to us. We teach that we must live the qualities of God in order to have them. That's what we mean by that. We must live as those God qualities in order to live the life that we want to live, the life that calls forth from us, the life that is the urge inside of us, that inspires us to keep going. In order to live that life, we must be those qualities. And in order to be them, we have to love ourselves. It's circular like that. We must do the soul work to learn to love ourselves. So why do I keep talking about pride? What does pride have to do with it? Pride, as a symbol, is that escalator moment when we come up out of the depth of self-loathing and into the world where we love ourselves and we accept that other people love us and accept us too, just as we are. Your soul wants to come out of your closet. It does. It wants to love itself. It wants to unravel the puzzles of self-love and be free to be the God self that you were meant to be. So how do we do that? Laine, that sounds great, but how do I do it? The first thing we have to do is we have to continue to look in the mirror. We have to fully realize that we are human beings having human experience. We have to stop being afraid of ourselves. Panache Desai was here a few weeks ago, and he said it brilliantly, and I'm stealing it from him. He said, we have to stop resisting being human. Every experience that we have that makes us feel separate, that makes us feel uncomfortable, that makes us squirm, that makes us sad or angry, all of those experiences are normal. They're normal human experiences. Everything that happens is normal because it happens. You're a human being having human experiences. Yes, we teach that you're a spiritual being, but your spiritual being is also having human experiences. We have to accept that. So first we have to accept that we're human beings. Messy, juicy, lovey, crazy human beings. Accept that. That's the first step. The second step is we have got to continue to be more and more honest about who we are and what we're working on. What's up for us? We can't hide who we are. We all have these self-love puzzles. We're all trying to solve them. We have to claim them for ourselves as mine and mine alone. These are my self-love puzzles. And words are powerful. So this morning we're going to do an affirmation out loud. Yes, you are going to do an affirmation out loud. So this is what the affirmation sounds like. It says, I'm learning to love my blank. You're going to fill in that blank. So I want you to think of whatever has come up for you as I've been talking. What things have crossed your mind that you're learning to love about yourself? Maybe it's been a lifelong journey of trying to figure out how to love this. What is your blank? What is that thing for you? Everybody have their word? All right, so we're going to do this affirmation 3 times. I'm going to say, I'm learning to love my, and then I'm going to pause and let you speak out loud and proud, okay? Are you ready? 3 times. I'm learning to love my, I'm learning to love my, I'm learning to love my, yes. Your truth sets you free. Did you notice everyone had a word to say? You're not alone. Some people had several words. We could be here all day if I was going to say all my words. But the truth sets you free, and the fact that you have spoken that into the universe, into that powerful creative medium that accepts your word, you are being lined up for opportunities to continue to heal that, to continue to learn to love that. That's how it works. The truth sets you free. There's power in your word. So once you've stopped resisting being human and you begin to tell the truth about yourself, the 3rd step is to find your tribe. We are social beings. Find your people. Right here in this room, you have found your tribe about your self-love puzzle, about God or religion or spirituality or whatever it is that brought you here to heal. You found your tribe. There's love in this place for you on that self-love puzzle. But when you identify those other things you're working on, go find your people. Go find them. Perhaps it's a Weight Watchers meeting or an AA or another 12-step. Perhaps it's a club for introverts. Do they have clubs for introverts? Where are my introverts? Where are my introverts? They're in the room. You're not alone. You're not alone. But all of us are learning to love something about ourselves. And when you find your people, and if you can't find them in this room or elsewhere in the world, go online, because you can find people online that are healing the same things you're healing. And why is that important? Because you can stop pretending that you're the only one solving the puzzle you're trying to solve. You're never, ever the only one. And when you find your people, chances are you'll find in that room people who are further ahead in their healing process that can tell you a thing or two, that can show you the way. But chances are you'll also find someone who's inspired by the very steps you have taken to free yourself from that knot. Be that for someone else as well. Allow yourself to be loved by other people in that way. You have to find a place where you can fly your freak flag proudly. Give yourself a pride parade. Give yourself the chance to say, this is who I am, and I'm proud of the lessons that I'm learning in my life. It's all about self-love. The prize awaits you. It's those instant tears of oneness and joy. It is the greatest love of all, and so it is.
Hi, I'm David Alt, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.